A routine drop-off. A forgotten military truck. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until Ray Addams discovered the hidden compartment. By nightfall, unmarked helicopters would darken the Texas sky, and his scrapyard would become the center of a government operation. He thought he was just salvaging parts. He had no idea he was holding a secret worth millions. Let's see how this unexpected twist changed everything. Ray Addams was 72, his hands rough and calloused from decades of honest work. While his friends eased into retirement, filling their days with golf, fishing, or vacationing to warmer places, Ray found peace among the endless rows of forgotten metal and rusting machines. The steady hum of a welder, the clinking of tools against steel, and the unmistakable scent of engine oil were the sounds and smells of his sanctuary. Military vehicles were his specialty, a passion sparked by stories from his older brother, who had served in Afghanistan. Ray could spend hours bringing old battle-worn trucks back to life, piecing them together with the patience of a sculptor. It wasn't just the challenge of making them run again, it was the history embedded in their frames. Each dent, each scratch told a story. And Ray cherished the feeling of restoring them to their former glory. Honoring the memories of those who once relied on them. He'd rise before dawn, coffee steaming in his travel mug as he navigated the cluttered paths of his scrapyard, assessing what the day's projects would be. On most days, he'd lose himself in the work until the sun dipped below the horizon. To him, there was nothing more satisfying than coaxing life from something others considered dead, and when his back arched or his fingers cramped, it only served as a reminder that he was alive and doing what he loved. His daughter Lisa called every Sunday from Chicago, always asking the same thing, "Dad, when are you going to sell that place and actually enjoy life?" Ray would chuckle, his voice like gravel. "I am enjoying life, Lisa. This place is my paradise." Lisa never understood it. To her, the yard was just a pile of rusted junk, but to Ray, it was a treasure trove. A collection of stories waiting to be revived. His happiest moments weren't spent sitting in a recliner or cruising on a fancy vacation. They were spent here, with his tools in hand, sweat beading on his forehead, and the satisfaction of a job well done. Every once in a while, a collector or enthusiast would stop by, their eyes lighting up when Ray led them to the perfect part or restored vehicle. The thrill of seeing someone's appreciation for his work was a feeling no luxury resort could ever offer. Lately, he had help. His 22-year-old grandson, Nick, had started working at the yard a few days a week after finishing community college. Nick wasn't sure what he wanted in life. He'd dabbled in a few things, taking courses on welding, mechanics, and even graphic design, but nothing quite stuck. Ray could see the restlessness in the boy's eyes, the subtle way he tensed up whenever the topic of the future came up. But out here, in the sprawling yard of twisted metal and decaying machines, Nick seemed to relax. There was something about the work that grounded him, Ray could tell. Maybe it was the way his grandson's hands grew steadily more confident with every bolt tightened and every piece of rusted metal salvaged. Or maybe it was the stories Ray would share, tales of military legends, of how his brother had spoken about the grit and guts it took to survive places like Kandahar. Nick loved those stories, even if he pretended not to care. Ray appreciated the extra hands and the company. For all the grumbling Nick did about the heat and the dirt, he always showed up. Sometimes he'd bring Ray coffee, other times just a pair of fresh gloves he picked up on his way over. Ray suspected it was Nick's way of showing he cared, even if he was too proud to say it out loud. That morning, as the Texas sun bore down on them, Nick wiped sweat from his brow and nodded toward the truck. "What's with the old military transport?" "Some guy practically gave it away," Ray replied. "We'll start stripping it after lunch." The battered 1960 SM-37 military transport was in rough shape. Faded green paint peeling, rust eating through the fenders. At first glance, nothing special, until they looked closer. After a quick lunch in the air-conditioned office where Ray enjoyed his daily dose of black coffee and Nick devoured a burger like he hadn't eaten in days, they stepped back out into the punishing Texas heat. The midday sun shimmered off the scattered piles of metal, but neither of them seemed to mind. Work was waiting. Ray lifted the hood of the old M37 with the kind of reverence most men reserved for opening a precious gift. It groaned and creaked, but finally gave way, revealing the grimy interior beneath. Nick stood by, snapping photos for their online listings, his phone already filled with pictures of rusty parts and half-assembled vehicles. But Ray's eyes narrowed as he inspected the engine. his brows knitted together in a deep frown. "That's odd." Nick glanced up from his phone, his fingers paused mid-text. "What is? Engine's been swapped," Ray replied, his voice tight, "and the serial numbers are filed off." Nick leaned over the engine bay, peering at the spot Ray was pointing to. "That bad?" Ray scratched his chin, the rough calluses scraping against his stubble. "Could mean stolen, could mean nothing. People modify these all the time, but someone went through a lot of trouble to hide this. The engine was a newer model, too sleek and polished compared to the rugged, worn exterior of the truck. Whoever installed it had skill, maybe even expertise. But the real question was why?" Nick shrugged. "Maybe some collector is trying to make it run better?" "Maybe," Ray replied, but there was a nagging feeling in his gut he couldn't shake. Something about the whole thing felt off. His instincts, honed over years of dealing with rare and valuable parts, were practically screaming at him. "Let's check underneath before we tear it apart." Nick nodded, a bit of excitement sparking in his eyes as he grabbed the controls of the hydraulic lift. The old transport rose with a heavy groan, its rusted joints protesting the motion. Nick flicked on the overhead light, the bright beams cutting through the shadows beneath the truck. And that's when Ray saw it. A welded compartment, painted to match the undercarriage, nearly invisible. Whoever did this was smart, meticulous. The welding was seamless, expertly crafted to blend in with the surrounding metal. If Ray hadn't been looking for it, he would have missed it entirely. "See that?" Ray pointed, his voice low and cautious. His fingers traced the faint outline of the welded compartment, his curiosity now fully ignited. Nick let out a low whistle. "Looks custom, not a factory. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Ray nodded. The craftsmanship was exceptional. This wasn't some amateur welding job done in someone's garage. This was professional work, military grade, perhaps. His heart thudded heavily in his chest as he slid underneath the vehicle, ignoring the protests from his aching joints. The cool metal pressed against his back, his arms reaching above his head, fingers searching for any sort of mechanism. Click. The sound was almost imperceptible, but Ray's trained ear caught it. His eyes widened as his hand brushed over a small, cleverly concealed latch. Whoever designed this compartment wanted it to stay hidden, but they'd underestimated just how stubborn Ray Addams could be. "Hand me the flashlight," Ray called out, his voice rough with excitement. Nick scrambled to pass him the flashlight, his own eagerness evident. The beam cut through the shadows, landing directly on the nearly invisible hinge line. Ray's hands trembled slightly as he pressed down and pulled. The compartment door creaked open, the sound echoing like a ghostly whisper in the silent yard. Inside sat a metal box the size of a thick book. It was battered but sturdy, its surface scratched and dented from years of travel. But what caught Ray's attention most was the lock. Solid. Government issue. The kind built to keep secrets buried. A faded military insignia was stamped across the top, partially worn away by time but still recognizable. An eagle perched atop a shield, surrounded by stars. The symbol of authority, of secrets best left untouched. Nick exhaled, eyes wide with awe. "Whoa, what do you think is inside?" Ray carefully pulled the box out, surprised by its weight. It felt heavier than it should have, as if the contents were made of something far more valuable than just metal and paper. His hands cradled it gently, his mind racing through possibilities. Classified documents? Coordinates? Something far more dangerous? "No idea," Ray muttered, his voice tight with unease. "But I don't like it." They set the box on the workbench, its metal surface gleaming dully under the fluorescent lights. Up close, the markings were clearer. Some kind of military seal, though neither of them could place it. The worn emblem looked like it belonged to a unit neither had heard of, and that only deepened Ray's unease. "This isn't your standard issue," Ray said. His voice belonged to... They didn't want it found. "Should we open it?" Nick asked. Eyes flicking nervously between Ray and the box, his excitement from earlier had melted into a mix of fear and fascination. Ray shook his head firmly. "Not our business. Let's call Sheriff Duncan. If this thing's as important as it looks, we need to do this by the book." His fingers reached for the dusty old phone mounted on the workshop wall. The receiver felt cold against his palm as he prepared to dial the familiar number. But then he heard it. A low, steady whump, 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 Ray's hand froze mid-dial, his body tensing instinctively. The sound wasn't unfamiliar, but it was out of place. He'd spent years working on military vehicles, and he knew the difference between the occasional life-flight chopper that buzzed overhead and whatever this was. No, this was something bigger, heavier, and worse. It was deliberate. "What the hell?" Ray muttered, his words trailing off as he dropped the receiver and stepped outside, Nick following close behind, his own curiosity swallowed by a creeping dread. The sunlight hit them like a wall, but the brightness couldn't mask the shadow moving across the sky. An unmarked black military helicopter descended from above, its rotors slicing through the air with a mechanical precision that sent shivers down Ray's spine. The chopper's matte back finish gleamed ominously in the harsh sunlight, its presence an unnatural intrusion into Ray's world of rust and ruin. It circled the yard once like a predator sizing up its prey, before tilting slightly and descending toward the open field next to his scrapyard. Dust and debris swirled around them, kicked up by the powerful downdraft. Ray shielded his eyes, his heart pounding like a jackhammer. Nick stumbled backward, eyes wide and mouth agape. Before Ray could process it, 3 black SUVs roared down his driveway, kicking up dust. They screeched to a stop. The doors flew open. Men in Navy uniforms stepped out, accompanied by others in dark suits. One man, his short hair graying at the temples, approached Ray with the authority of someone who expected obedience. "Ray Addams?" Ray swallowed. "Yeah?" "Commander Patrick Graves, United States Navy. We need to speak with you about a vehicle recently brought into your yard." Ray's throat went dry. "The military truck?" Graves' expression didn't change. "And its contents." Nick spoke up. "Sir, we found a metal box hidden under it. We were just about to call the sheriff." One of the men in suits murmured into a radio. Almost immediately, more personnel swarmed the garage. Ray and Nick stood frozen as the team moved with purpose. Inside the workshop, gloved hands carefully lifted the box. They handled it like it was volatile. Others documented the truck, snapping photos, collecting engine samples. "The guy who dropped it off," Ray said. "Tall, skinny, barely spoke. Paid cash, left quick. No paperwork." A man in a suit turned a tablet toward him. "This him?" Ray squinted at the grainy footage. "That's him. You know who he is?" The agent didn't answer. He just turned and walked away. Meanwhile, Commander Graves pulled Ray aside. "Mr. Addams, I need your full cooperation. What you found is classified. This entire situation is a matter of national security." Ray frowned. "Can you at least tell me what's going on? It's just an old truck." Graves finally let out a breath. "That old truck was stolen 3 weeks ago from a Navy research facility." Ray felt his stomach drop. "Research?" "Inside that box is experimental navigation technology." "Spy stuff," Ray guessed. Graves didn't confirm or deny. Let's just say certain people would pay millions for what was in that truck. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Ray and Nick watched the military helicopter lift off, the truck secured beneath it. The SUVs followed in a convoy. All that remained was dust and silence. Nick turned to his grandfather. "What do you think was in that box?" Ray exhaled. "Something worth sending the damn Navy to a Texas scrapyard for." Then he pulled an envelope from his pocket, marked with a government seal. Inside was a check, with more zeros than Ray had ever seen. 2 weeks later, Commander Graves returned, this time alone. He shook Ray's hand. "I wanted to thank you personally." Ray nodded. "Still don't know what I did." Graves smirked. "And you never will, but you did the right thing. That's what matters." That night, a young Navy lieutenant stopped by with a package. Inside was a photograph of Ray's brother in his Afghanistan uniform, one Ray hadn't seen in decades. Attached was a note. "One generation service inspires another. Your brother would be proud." Ray hung the photo in his office, right next to where they'd first found the hidden box. Every year, on the anniversary of that strange day, an envelope would arrive. No return address. Inside a simple card. 5 words. "Thank you for your service." Because sometimes the smallest choices made in quiet places by ordinary hands can ripple far beyond what we can see. And sometimes the right thing isn't about recognition or reward, but about leaving the world just a little better than you found it. If this story inspired you, tap like and subscribe. Share one word in the comments that sums up how it made you feel. Until next time, stay true, stay brave, and always do the right thing.